The night was colder than usual, and the neon lights of Tommy's 24-hour diner flickered like they were tired of witnessing human cruelty. Inside, the hum of the jukebox mixed with the low chatter of truckers, waitresses, and lost souls nursing midnight coffee. But when a young girl named Lena Parker, barely 20, walked through that squeaky door, the entire place shifted. She wasn't flashy, wasn't loud, just a quiet girl in a faded denim jacket, ripped jeans, and a white shirt she'd probably worn too many times. Her soft brown hair was tied loosely, strands framing her pale face that carried the heaviness of someone who'd seen too much too young. She came for a hot meal and maybe a kind word, but what she got that night would leave scars deeper than skin. Before we go further, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and standing up for what's right, then please take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Soul Tale, where every story reminds us that there's still humanity left in this world. Lena took a seat by the window, quietly tracing her finger along the glass as rain drizzled down outside. The diner was half full, and three men in leather jackets sat across from her, laughing too loud, smelling of whiskey and arrogance. They were the kind who looked for attention, the kind who didn't know what real power looked like. The waitress, a tired woman named Rosie, served Lena a plate of pancakes with a kind smile, maybe sensing something fragile in the girl's eyes. Lena thanked her softly and began eating, trying to ignore the growing noise from the table nearby. The men noticed her. One of them, with greasy blonde hair and a sneer that came too easily, whispered something to the others. They started jeering, calling out to her, asking why a lonely little thing was out so late. Lena tried to pretend she didn't hear, focusing on her food. But when one of them walked over and leaned too close, breathing the sour stench of alcohol, her hands began to tremble. "Hey, sweetheart," he said, mock sweetness dripping from his tone. "Smile a little. You might get a free coffee out of it." She turned her face away. That's when his grin twisted into something uglier. His hand reached out, catching the edge of her shirt. In one cruel motion, he yanked it. The fabric tore with a sharp sound that cut through the diner's chatter like a scream. The whole room froze. Her eyes widened in shock, shame burning across her face. Rosie gasped. The men laughed loud, cruel, careless laughter that made everyone else look away. But none of them knew, not one, that the quiet girl they had just humiliated was Lena Parker, the younger sister of Luke "Iron" Parker, vice president of the Hells Angels chapter in Carson County. For a moment, Lena couldn't move. Tears welled up, her throat tightening with humiliation and fear. She grabbed her torn shirt, covering herself, and rushed toward the restroom. Rosie followed, wrapping her in a spare jacket and whispering soft comfort. But Lena didn't cry much. Instead, she stared at her reflection in the cracked mirror, and her eyes, red and trembling, slowly hardened. Because while those men saw a scared girl, they had just ignited something far more dangerous: the wrath of a family that protected its own. Outside, rain turned into a storm. Lena slipped out the back door, pulled out her phone, and called one number, the only number she knew by heart. It rang twice before a deep voice answered. "Hey, sis," Luke said, his tone instantly alert when he heard her silence. "You okay?" She didn't say much, just whispered, "Diner, they hurt me." The phone went quiet for a second. Then came three words, low and steady: "Stay where you are." Within 20 minutes, the rumble of motorcycles echoed through the wet night. A dozen bikes, chrome glinting under the streetlights, pulled into the diner's lot. The air shifted, fear rippled through the place before the doors even opened. Luke Parker walked in first, 6'3", long black hair tied back, beard trimmed rough, leather vest covered with patches that told stories of loyalty, pain, and pride. His piercing gray eyes scanned the diner until they landed on the three men still laughing over their beers, unaware of what was coming. Rosie stood frozen behind the counter. Lena, still wrapped in the jacket, emerged quietly from the restroom. The moment Luke saw her, his expression cracked. The hardened biker shell fell away for an instant, replaced by a brother's silent heartbreak. He took off his leather jacket and placed it over her shoulders, his hand shaking slightly. Then he turned to the men. "Which one?" he asked softly. Lena didn't speak, she just looked down, but Luke already knew. The diner went silent as he stepped closer to the table. The men straightened up, realizing too late who they were dealing with. The patches on Luke's vest weren't just decoration, they were warnings, Hell's Angels, the kind of men no one messed with. "You think it's funny to hurt a girl?" Luke's voice was calm, too calm. The blond man tried to stammer something, but Luke slammed his hand on the table so hard the cups rattled. "Apologize," he said, eyes cold as steel. The man hesitated. Luke leaned closer, his tone dropping into something that felt like thunder. "Now." What followed wasn't chaos, it was justice, silent and swift. Luke didn't raise a fist. He didn't need to. The sight of the bikers standing shoulder to shoulder behind him, the weight of their presence, was enough to make grown men shake. The three cowards stammered apologies, their faces pale with fear. Luke told them to leave, and when they stumbled out into the rain, one of the angels followed, just to make sure they wouldn't come back. Afterward, Luke sat beside his sister, still trembling but safe now. He didn't speak at first. He just reached over and took her hand. The diner, moments ago a place of humiliation, had turned into a quiet sanctuary. Rosie brought over a cup of tea, her eyes watery. The bikers stayed outside, guarding the door like sentinels. Luke finally whispered, "You're not alone, Lena. You'll never be." She looked up, tears falling freely now, not of fear but of release. The next day the story spread across town, how three bullies had picked on a girl and ended up facing the wrong family. But for Lena, it wasn't about revenge. It was about reclaiming her strength. She decided to stay with Luke's biker family for a while, helping at their garage, finding purpose in the Brotherhood's loyalty. She saw how these men, often judged by their tattoos and loud engines, treated one another with honor, protection, and love, values she'd thought the world had forgotten. Weeks passed and Lena began to heal. The laughter of the bikers, the smell of grease and gasoline, and the sound of engines revving at dawn became the rhythm of her new life. She started sketching again, drawing portraits of her brother and his crew, capturing their grit and grace. Luke hung one of her drawings on the garage wall, a symbol that family was more than blood. It was about standing up for the people you love, no matter what the world thought. Months later, Lena returned to that same diner, not as the frightened girl who once ran away, but as a woman who had faced her pain and risen from it. She walked in confidently, her brother's patch sewn on the back of her new denim jacket, not a member, but a sister of the angels. The regulars watched as she took her seat, smiling at Rosie, who hugged her like an old friend. The past didn't vanish, but it no longer controlled her. Sometimes justice doesn't roar, it rides in quietly on two wheels, wearing leather and carrying loyalty like armor. Lena's story became a whisper among truckers in small towns, not a tale of revenge, but of resilience.